What is the best AI to use when making a FiveM server? I've done a couple of videos now on using AI in FiveM, but we're yet to decide what is the best AI, a definitive answer to use in FiveM. Across all my videos, you guys have been telling me to use a bunch of different AIs, so I've collated those comments, I've got those AIs ready. We're going to put them all to the test and find out which one is best. The AIs we're going to be using is going to be Claude AI on its Sonnet 4.5. And the next one we're going to be using is Google Gemini. And the next one is going to be Grock and then ChatGPT. We've done videos on both Grock and ChatGPT in the past. We haven't done a video with Gemini or Claude. We have a couple of ground rules. We're going to do 4 different categories. We've got the basic setup. We're going to ask the AI how to deploy a FiveM server. Then we've got the advice category. We're going to ask what frameworks we need, and we're going to give the AI our requirements. And then we're going to get it to make us a basic script. Nothing too insane, a basic script because we don't want to take up too much time. And finally, we're going to ask it to help us with modding the FiveM server. So basically just some basic ground rules that I feel like everyone would want to be doing when they first make a FiveM server using AI. And we can only use one prompt for each category. So I've typed up a prompt. The prompt is, I want to make a FiveM server. Explain to me what I need in order to get a FiveM server set up and running on my own PC. Give me everything I need. So that should mean that it'll give us everything we need in just one prompt. We're going to give every single AI the exact same prompt. So the first thing we're going to do is click enter and see what happens. Okay, so Claude has finished giving me this prompt, and I'm not going to lie, it's a really bad start. So straight away, it gives me the pre-requirements that we need: a legitimate copy of GTA 5, port forwarding on your router, very true, and basic technical knowledge if you're comfortable with file management and command line. You don't need command line, you only need file management. I feel like everyone on their computer knows how to use File Explorer. Then the step-by-step setup is giving us the official link for the FiveM artifacts, which is good. And then it says, look for the latest build, look for the newest version number, which is also good, because if you click actual latest recommended, that's going to be wrong, and same with optional. And then it does say to create a new folder on our PC, FiveM Server, and extract the downloaded files into this folder. Again, that's wrong. I wouldn't do it like that. You make the FiveM Server on your own PC, you make a subfolder in there called server files, and then you put the files into that folder. You don't want to put it in just one folder, otherwise it's going to make stuff completely unorganized. And then it's telling us to manually create our server.cfg, which you wouldn't need to do because of txadmin. And then it's telling us to get our license key, which is true, you do need to do that, but you don't need to paste it into your server.cfg because you're going to use txadmin. You really don't need your Steam Web API key anymore. Create a resources folder, you don't need to do that because that's done by txadmin. And start your server by double-clicking the fxserver.exe, which is true. And then you can connect to your server if it's on your own PC by doing connect localhost and then a port. You don't need to do the port. This is really not a good start, especially for the AI that all of you guys are telling me is so amazing. We're going to give them all the same prompt. I feel like it should know that txadmin is how you set up a FiveM server these days, especially considering it even gave us a link to the txadmin artifacts build. Okay, so I've gone ahead and followed its instructions up to this point right here before we start the server. We're on stage 6. I'm just going to show you what it looks like right now. So if we go on over to our FiveM server, we made a folder called FiveM Server, just like it told us to do. We've put our FiveM Server artifacts inside of here. We've made a server.cfg manually somewhere in here, wherever the hell it's gone, because it's so unorganized. Right here, server.cfg. We've pasted in the lines it gave us. We've entered our server license key. We're not going to enter our Steam API key because I can't be bothered. And it's optional too, apparently. And then I've gone ahead and made a resources folder with a local folder for mods, apparently, that I'm going to install myself. And here is the Gemini prompt it has given us. It's actually a lot better start than Claude, in my opinion. It's given us the essential requirements again: a legal copy of GTA 5, a FiveM license key, FiveM client installed, which makes sense. I don't actually think that it told us to have FiveM installed here. No, it did not. And then obviously operating system, Windows 10, 11 is generally recommended, and server hardware can be extensive. Pretty good. And it's even given us a recommended specs here. So this is a lot better start in my opinion. Then it's given us a step-by-step setup. Download the FX server files, artifacts for Windows from the FiveM documentation website. It hasn't given us a link like Claude did, so that's a bit of a negative. Create a dedicated folder for your server. FiveM server. Inside this folder, create another named txdata not what I would name it because it's going to automatically make a TX data folder anyway. So it's sort of got a little bit lost there. And then it does say to inside the main folder, place the FX server files you downloaded. Again, I wouldn't do that. You need to make a subcategory folder first. I don't know where they're getting these from. It's going to be so unorganized. But much better than Claude, it's told us to use txadmin. So it's just telling us navigate to your server folder and run the prompt in the FX server executable. But it's automatically going to boot up into txadmin, so I don't really know what it's talking about there. Open the link, and then it says to go through the basic txadmin setup, choose a template, which, well, of course, we're going to ask it in the next part. Then networking, and how to start the server and connect by localhost. And it hasn't even put the port at the end because it knows what it's doing. No unnecessary bits, unlike Claude. Not amazing, not perfect, but it's a lot better. And then if you scroll on down, it's actually suggested you guys to watch a video by me, which is pretty interesting. I didn't even know that that is a thing that the AI is doing, is suggesting my video. So that's cool to see. But anyway, let's go ahead and set up the Gemini FiveM server just like it's told us to. Okay, so the FiveM server is set up just like Gemini told us to. You can see right here, it's on our desktop. I've put a little note above here just so you can see which server is which, made by what AI as we go along. But we've called it FiveM server. Inside of there, we made a TX data folder. And again, we've put our FX server files inside of here. Wouldn't recommend it, but we haven't made a server.cfg. The next step it told us to do was to do a command prompt like I've got up right here and navigate to the server directory like I have done, but it didn't tell us how to navigate there, so you sort of have to figure that one out. But if you wanted to navigate there, it's CD and then just copy and paste the file directory, and it's told us to paste in this prompt right here. So I've never done this in my life. I really don't feel like this is going to work, but we'll see what happens. And it has indeed worked. That's actually pretty impressive. I didn't even know that that's a thing that you could do. And now it's telling us, obviously, we need to go to our txadmin page. So we should already have that launched up here, and we log in to our account, and now we do the recipe. And at this point, we get to the deployment type. So we'll leave it here before we move on to the next stage. We've got 2 more AIs left to test and see if these can do it better. Okay, and here is the Grock prompt that it's given us. This is just lost. I don't even think it knows what it's talking about anymore. It starts off really good. We've got the basic requirements. Again, they've all given us a legal copy of GTA 5. It tells us the system requirements. It goes to give relatively specific specs. Basic technical knowledge, port forwarding, running commands in terminal. Again, that's not needed, but file management is, of course, needed. Software requirements. It's not really given us that before. Visual C++. Yeah, that is something that you need, but most Windows PCs have that pre-installed anyway. MySQL or MariaDB, that's sort of jumping the gun there. I don't know why that's under requirements. Optional but recommended. I wouldn't even touch on that to begin with whatsoever, to be honest with you. Step-by-step guide to set up a FiveM server. It then moves on to tell us to first of all install Visual C++. That's so random. And then it tells us to install MySQL or MariaDB. That is not the first thing I'd recommend doing at all. And then install a text editor. Like, not all PCs don't come with Notepad anyway. Not really needed. This is super random. Then it tells us to download the FiveM server files. Create a FiveM account. None of us told us to do that. You'll need a key. It tells us to generate a key first. Download the server files from the FiveM server artifacts page. It does give us a link, which is good. And then it says, look for a file named fx.tar.xz. That's what? That's so weird. And then extract the files to a folder on your PC, e.g. FiveM server. That's actually the same server folder name it told us to use in Gemini, but it's so random. It's not even told us to make a FiveM server folder name. It just says extract it to one and then gives us an example. And use a tool like WinRAR to extract. That's very specific. And then this here, the server config is awful. It says once you've extracted it in your FiveM server folder, you'll see the server.exe in a server data folder. You're not going to see a server data folder, obviously. Server's not set up or running. Create a new folder inside server data called resources. It doesn't exist. Okay, that's going to be made by txadmin anyway. It's not touched on txadmin at all yet. This is doing the same as Claude. It's telling us to create a server.cfg in the server data folder. It's telling us to enter a key, replace the password for MySQL, even though we've not even got a database going. Archon password. This is super confusing for someone who has no idea what it's talking about. This has completely jumped the gun on everything and ignored the existence of txadmin. And now it's telling us to set up a database, whatever that's going to be for, who knows. And then it's telling us the ES6 framework. This is so manual. This is an incredibly old way of doing it. Copy GTA 5 files. FiveM server requires GTA 5 files to function. In your server folder, create a folder called cache. Copy the update. Wow, this is awful. This is by far the worst. Start the server? Yeah, because this is awful. I don't even know what to do. We'll follow this to some degree because this is completely unfollowable. This is definitely the worst so far. Okay, so I've gone ahead and copied it to some degree because the rest of it was complete rubbish. You can't even do half the stuff that it's telling you to do at this stage. It's not worth the effort at all. Like, that's definitely bottom tier score for the AI so far. There's no way ChatGPT can be worse than that. We made a server data folder, made a resources folder for some bizarre reason. We made the server.cfg manually again, not needed. It's completely ignored the existence of txadmin. And again, our server files are here, which is stupid. So yes, of course, like the other ones, we're at the deployment stage. So we'll move on to the next AI. So last but not least in this stage, we're going to be doing ChatGPT. We're going to give it this prompt, the exact same prompt as the rest of them, press enter, and see if this can do a better job than Grock just did, because that sucked. Okay, here you go. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is by far the best prompt we've been given so far, and it's on ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is the one that you guys have been telling me I need to get rid of and burn and set fire to. It's way worse than all these rest of them. This is by far the best and most correct prompt. It's given us the required downloads, it's given us the system requirements, it's given us links, told us to pick the latest recommended build. That's the only thing that is wrong that I can see so far. Do not do that. Select the latest one available to you. Extract it to a folder, e.g. FX Server. txadmin comes built into FX Server. Actually correct. No, this is brilliant. No separate install needed. Exactly what you want. It's told us Visual C++ again. Should come pre-installed, but it's telling us to install it. And GitHub. This is different, but useful for installing frameworks like Cubicle. That is true, but you won't need to do that. It should know that because obviously txadmin auto installs Cubicle if you did. This is the best bit so far. Make a folder like FiveM Server. Inside, create subfolders. FiveM Server, and then a server folder, FiveM Server, and then a resources folder. The FiveM Server and then server folder is the best thing I've seen so far. And then it's told us to extract our FX Server artifacts into that server folder. That is exactly how you do it. That's how you keep a nice and organized and beautifully made FiveM Server. The resources bit is a bit unneeded because that's going to be made by txadmin. So told us to generate a CFX license key through txadmin again. And it's told us to grab our IP address from what is my IP address. This is very, very similar to the steps that I would do in a tutorial on how to make a FiveM server in 2025. It's very, very close. So it might be using YouTube in order to train itself because this is infinitely better. We told us not to make our own server.cfg. It's told us how to configure the one from txadmin. It's told us how to start the server, port forwarding, installing frameworks. Obviously, you can do that through txadmin. It's got a little bit lost here. So it seems to get worse, but it's okay if you're using GitHub. Auto start management, common issues, way better. Way, way, way better than the rest. So let's go ahead and make the ChatGPT FiveM server. Okay, and I've gone ahead and made the ChatGPT server using the instructions it gave me. So we've not got an unorganized FiveM server to begin with, which is nice. We've got a random resources folder. Don't need that. Got the server folder, which is where it should be. This is where your artifacts should be. But like ChatGPT did say, I copied it exactly because we don't know what we're doing. And I installed the latest recommended FiveM server artifacts. So these are going to be already straight away outdated. So, but then it does say to start our fxserver.exe on up and get ourselves on into txadmin. And then from here, we are indeed greeted to the same page we've been greeted to on the rest of them for selecting our deployment type. So that marks an end to the basic setup category. So I'm going to quickly go over the scores out of 5 for the first category that we're doing with these AIs. So I've rated Claude a 2. It's decent. It made us do some wrong stuff, but we got there in the end. Gemini a 1.5. It was pretty much the same as Claude, but with extra layers, and we still got there in the end. Grock, awful, worst thing ever to exist. Set fire to that. Rubbish. 0.5. We got there in the end with txadmin, but not too much help of Grock. It's the first one we had to just ignore. And then ChatGPT wasn't perfect with that resources folder, but it was close to perfect, so it's getting a 4 out of 5. Okay, and moving on to the next category, which is advice. So we're going to ask it for advice on what the best popular recipe we should select on txadmin is. I'm not going to even try and make it assume that we're on txadmin for these AIs. It's just not going to go well, so we'll speed things up a little. And I want it to be an RP server like NoPixel, but I want it to be easy to use and instantly set up. So I feel like that's pretty basic. It's pretty simple. I feel like most people who wanted a FiveM server would ask something like that if they didn't know what to do next. So we put those same prompts into every single AI we got going here. And once more, we're going to start with Claude AI. So we're going to press enter and see what it tells us. So it is recommended to us the Cubicle framework, which is pretty much what I would have said. Either Cubicle or Qbox for what we need. It did suggest an alternative, which is ESX Legacy. It's older, more established, more complex to configure. That's very, very true. Setting up Cubicle via txadmin, set the recipe, server name, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, that's pretty correct, actually. But obviously, all of these we just do through txadmin anyway. Post install setup. This is pretty random. Find a character. Set yourself as admin. That's actually pretty useful, I guess. Config file. It's pretty good. Set permissions. That should be done anyway. Default controls and commands. That's nice to see for Cubicle. Giving us a nice comparison table, actually. Yeah, I quite like that. And you can see that it thinks that Cubicle is the god because it's given it 5 stars for everything. Giving us popular sites as well for mods, which is cool. That's a pretty cool thing to do, actually. Cubicle recipe, free scripts, paid scripts. Perfect. I'd actually say that's a pretty solid answer, considering the first answer it gave us sucked. So let's go ahead, set up the Claude server with Cubicle. Okay, and there we go. Cubicle server with the Claude is all set up. So we're just going to click next. We're not going to mess around with any of this. We'll save and run the server and move on to the next one. One thing I did want to know is it didn't tell us we needed to have XAMPP open and running with MySQL and Apache. So you probably would have got a little bit lost without that, but we'll just give it that one. Maybe I did mention it in the first setup bit. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to Gemini. Once again, we're going to give it that exact same prompt, press enter, and see what it tells us we should use. So Gemini has finished giving us the prompt, and it's pretty much the same as Claude. It's told us for a NoPixel style server that's instantly set up and ready to go, and it resembles NoPixel, the recommended framework is going to be Cubicle. And it does then say, or its evolution Qbox, but then goes on to rinse about Cubicle itself. So it sort of missed the book there. It says a bunch of key features, which is true. Some setup in txadmin, which is true. Provide the license key and alternative is ESX Legacy. That's exactly what Claude says. And it pretty much says the same thing. Doesn't have quite as good of a comparison. So maybe not as easy to understand if you're someone who doesn't know what are you talking about and how to deploy the chosen recipe. It's correct and it is pretty dead on. But you can see right here, it says choose Cubicle framework, not Qbox. It was so close to selecting Qbox. Honestly, that's probably the one that I would go for. And I hope that these does indeed suggest that. But let's go ahead and set up the Gemini server. So weirdly, because of how Claude has told us to set up the FiveM server, incorrectly, may I add, because it's done the stupid thing of putting the FiveM server artifacts inside of the main folder, which is wrong, is now gone ahead and made ourselves our TX data folder on our desktop right here. So that is wrong. It's not even located in the FiveM server folder because it's so awful. But you know what that's gone ahead and done is it means that every time we launch an fxserver.exe, inside of these, it's gonna find that TX data folder automatically, and it's gonna go ahead and launch every single server with the same framework. So I'm gonna have to do some magic and move this inside of the FiveM server folder. But please note that the ones that did this are gonna all have that exact same issue. Okay, this is all said and done, but again, you can see right here, your recipe is being executed to desktop than TX data because it's done it wrong. Hey AI, why is it how is AI even at the point where it's doing it wrong like this? This is so simple. But yes, we've then gone ahead and set up the basic Cubicle framework like it suggested on Gemini for the Gemini server. But I'm going to go ahead and have to move the TX data folder inside of the server again. Otherwise, all the servers are going to launch on the same framework. Okay, and now we're moving on to Grock AI. Of course, we're going to ask it the exact same question, and we're just going to go ahead and click enter and see what it gives us. Okay, and following suit are the rest of the AIs, of course, it's gone ahead and suggested us Cubicle rather than Qbox. They all seem to acknowledge Qbox, but don't actually suggest it. So again, it suggested Qbox, and it's explained why, beginner friendly and things like that. But again, it suggested us Qbox as an alternative, as well as ESX Legacy, giving us some cons, best for, etc. But again, we haven't been actually suggested Qbox to be the main contender for our framework. So let's go ahead and set up the Grock FiveM server using Cubicle once again. Okay, so we set up Cubicle on the Grock server. Once again, because of how poorly the AI has set up the server to begin with, it's gone ahead and made the TX data folder on our desktop. So like all the other ones so far, we're going to have to move that on into the correct location. Otherwise, we won't be able to set up ChatGPT FiveM server. So let's just go ahead and move on to ChatGPT. Okay, and last but not least, in this advice category where we get it to pick the framework, we're going to be asking ChatGPT. So we've got the question typed up. Let's go ahead and press enter and see what framework it suggests. Okay, and you'd be surprised to know that ChatGPT has indeed picked Cubicore like the rest. It's actually listed here why not to pick the rest. It said Qbox is newer, more complex, and fewer scripts. ESX is older, slower, messy, and not beginner friendly. vMenu, not an RP framework, just menus for spawning items. Bare bones, empty server, no RP content. So there you go. That's why we're doing Cubicore, I guess, in all of these frameworks. ChatGPT has put it a lot simpler than the rest. Maybe not as good of a comparison compared to Claude, but definitely a decent explanation. And rather than going back and forth telling you could pick this one as an alternative, it straight up just said Cubicore is the only one you should go for. So let's go ahead and set up the final Cubicore server. Okay, so that's the final server setup with txadmin for the Cubicore recipe. And you will go ahead and notice right here where it says your recipe has been executed, the server has been deployed in the correct location. Rather than putting the TX data on the desktop like all the rest of them, because ChatGPT told us to set it up the correct way in the beginning, it's actually done it correctly. This is the only server which has done it correctly and would result in an actually well-functioning FiveM server. So you got to give it some points in that regards. Okay, so ending off the basic advice category, we're going to go ahead and rank them all out of 5. And starting with Claude, we're going to be ranking Claude a 3.5 out of 5. I feel like it was just bang on in the middle. It was pretty average, although I did like the way that it gave us some commands and stuff like that. None of those did. And also it gave us a really nice comparison table. Definitely better than the rest, I'd say, in my opinion, in this category, considering they pretty much all suggested Cubicore. And then we're going to be just following up with Gemini, which is a 3. Same with Grock and same with ChatGPT. I feel like they were all pretty much on par. They all had the same level of information. They all suggested Cubicore. Just Claude in this case gave us a little bit more information, which I think would be useful. ChatGPT was very basic, although I guess maybe some of you will prefer that just because of how straight to the point it was. Okay, and now we're going to be moving on to the test on where we get it to make a basic FiveM script. We're going to be giving Claude, Gemini, Grock, and ChatGPT all the same prompt. And then rather than just seeing what they do, I'm just going to put it into the server and we'll load into each server and see if the script worked. Okay, so we've loaded on up into our Claude FiveM server and we have the script running that Claude made us, which I'll show you in a moment. But we got to do the most important thing, which is see if this script even works. So let's go ahead and do the /spawn car command and we'll do the T20 right here. Press enter and you will see that the script does indeed work with absolutely no issues at all. It's actually quite nice because it does prompt you some vehicles to spawn too. It says add a T20 police, you know, actually does give you some ideas if you're unsure of spawn code. So Claude actually did a pretty good job. It's made the script. It worked just like that. It was pretty simple to install and set up as well. And this right here is what it gave me back after we made the script. It told us to create in our resources folder a file called car spawner in the standalone resources folder, which is what I went ahead and did. And then inside the car spawner folder, create these 2 files, fxmanifest.lua. For some reason, I think it got a little bit confused, but it put the fxmanifest.lua lines and then instructions within the fxmanifest.lua, which you would just click copy and put it in and it won't work. So I actually just copied this bit here because, you know, I know what I'm doing, but if you put all of this in, it isn't going to work. I don't know what happened there. It sort of put instructions within it. Then you scroll down, it doesn't actually give you the second file. The actual second file right here, the client.lua, is on the right-hand side. Pretty random layout. It's not very clear, but obviously you can just copy that. You make a client file and paste it on in. It's giving you examples of cars to spawn. It told you how to do it, how it does it, and some common vehicle names. And then it does give us some suggestions if we want to make it better. But it's pretty much done its job perfectly. So let's move on to the next AI. And the next AI is going to be Gemini. The prompt is here. Let's put it in the FiveM server and see if it works. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made the scripts from Claude AI's instructions. We're in the Claude AI FiveM server. Let's go ahead and see if we can spawn on in the car. So again, is the exact same command. We're going to do t/spawn car. And again, it's pretty much the exact same layout. So we'll just do T20 again. Oh, interesting. We've done T20 and it appears to spawn an adder. What if I spawn an adder? It does spawn an adder. Once I spawn a Granger, it's just infinitely spawning adders. Interesting. I didn't see that one coming. I don't quite know what it's done there and how it's only spawning adders. Even if you put any command, that's pretty interesting. But I didn't see that one coming. I actually thought that most of these AIs would appear to get that one right. Okay, so let's have a look on what Gemini actually gave us. So it says it's a fantastic idea, learn how to write code, whatever, which is not really our intentions. And then I actually prefer the layout this is done. It's given us the two files and we can just open it on up and like copy it. There's no quick copy, but you can just Control A. I much prefer this layout. And then it's told us how to set it up, which is what we did. It's actually, rather than giving us a client.lua, it doesn't make any difference. It's actually told us to name it spawn car.lua, which is what we did. And then to ensure it. And it says to spawn car. If you'd like to dive deeper, we can look at adding specific features like allowing to spawn a specific car model as an argument. Spawn cars in Torno. Okay, so that's what's gone ahead and happened right here. If you look in the spawn car logic, no matter what you enter, it then goes ahead and just always spawns the adder. That's a really weird way of doing it. I've never seen a car command only let you spawn one, which is controllable via the config. I don't know why you'd want that. That's a really weird way of doing it from Gemini. Okay, so next we're moving on to Grock. Same prompt again. Let's go ahead and make that script and see if it works. Okay, so now we've loaded on into the Grock AI FiveM server. Let's go ahead and do that /spawn command and see if this works. I'm assuming this is not going to be the same as Gemini. So /spawn car, this one doesn't have any prompts like the other two did. And I guess we'll just do T20 again. And boom, it spawned it. No issues at all. There's actually, okay, there's another success spawn vehicle. They all seem to have that message, which is interesting. But it worked. It's not spawning any random car. We'll do another car just to check because I never saw that coming, to be fair. We'll spawn the adder. Okay, and it's spawning the adder, and this one actually does replace the previous vehicle we had spawned, which is nice to see too. So yeah, that's another decent script. It worked just like that, and it was easy to install. Let me show you just what it looked like when we asked the AI. So here we go. This is what the AI gave us as a prompt when we told it to make the basic FiveM script to spawn a car. And it's given us a little overview of the features, what it's going to do, check if the vehicle is a valid model, etc. Provide feedback via chat message, which it indeed did do. And you can see right here, something very different to the last two scripts that we have done, is it gave us a server and a client.lua. The other two have given us just a client.lua. Interesting how Grock AI thinks it is worth doing a separate server.lua to handle server-sided things like basic validation. Maybe that is how it's somehow deleting the vehicles when they spawn in and checking against stuff. I'm not really sure, but I don't really think this type of script actually needs a server.lua. So maybe it's a little bit unnecessary, but it worked, so you can't complain. And the way it laid it out was super easy. It gave us instructions, so we've done exactly like it said. I think this might be the best layout so far. You can just click copy as well. Made our life 10 times easier. And then it tells you how to ensure it, how to run it, how to spawn it. And then it told us how it works and some customization ideas, which is really cool. I think this is the best we've had so far. And finally, we're going to be finishing up with ChatGPT. Let's make the script ChatGPT told us to do and see if it works. Okay, so we've got the script loaded up that ChatGPT gave us. Let's see how it works. We'll do t/spawn car. Again, no prompts like Gemini and Claude gave us. Granted, the Claude one didn't really work. But we'll start with a T20, press enter, see if it works, and boom. It does indeed work. But this one, funnily enough, doesn't have any chat confirmation that we have spawned the vehicle. Those ones are from the previous scripts that we are testing. So that's interesting. That is one thing this doesn't have. Let's spawn in another car just to check that it's not just spawning in one car. And let's see if it replaces this one too. We'll spawn in the adder this time. And no, it does not. This one spawns in on top. So maybe that server.lua is what was needed in order to do that. But again, it works. There's no prompt in the chat. It was pretty simple to install. Let's have a look exactly what it gave us to make the script. So here you go. This is what it gave us when we did the prompt. A lot more simple than the other ones. You guys will remember the other ones were a lot more bloated in terms of the answer that it gave us. This is just boom. Here's how you do it, simple and straight to the point, which is pretty nice actually. It seems to be a trend with ChatGPT. Gave us a resource structure, how to make it so a folder called spawn car. There's no actual step-by-step instructions. It's sort of just like this is how you do it. So I guess you've got to sort of use your intuition. It says put it in straight into your resources folder. But again, very similar layout to Grock. You can just click copy code. I'd say it's pretty much on par, just a bit less explanation. Told us some spawn codes to use. It says UI notifications instead of prints. Yeah, it doesn't do that. That's something that it can add. It can add a DV command. Yeah, so there's no confirmation, but this one did, again, only one file, the client.lua, and of course the fx manifest.lua. So the only one to do a server.lua was indeed Grock, and that had one extra feature with the deleting the vehicles compared to the rest. So that marks an end of the making a script category for testing the AI, and this is exactly what they scored out of 5. We had a Claude out of a 3. I feel like it was one of the most solid scripts. It worked. It was pretty simple. Then we got Gemini following up with a 1.5. It sort of did it, but who wants a vehicle script which only spawns just one car and you have to change that in the config? That's super weird. It sort of worked. We'll just give it that 1.5. It's a 4 out of 5. That was pretty impressive, to be fair. It gave us a server.lua, but then it gave us an extra feature of deleting the vehicles when they spawned in rather than spawning on top. It gave us a prompt. The best vehicle spawning script that we had. And then following up with ChatGPT, that one's a 2.5. That one was meh. It was okay. I mean, it didn't delete the vehicles when you spawned them in, and it also didn't give a prompt, so it had overall less features than the rest. But I guess the actual way it gave it out was pretty decent. Okay, and following up with the final category in deciding what is the ultimate AI to use with your FiveM server, we're going to be asking it for some modding advice. Now, I've picked a question which I feel like is probably one of the more difficult questions for it to answer. It's got a little bit of layers to it. Rather than just a custom car or custom map mod or something like that, I'm asking it that you want to make a FiveM server with, I want to mod my FiveM server with custom clothing. How do I do it? Now, anyone will know if you tried to add custom clothing to your FiveM server before, if you do not have the FiveM Argentum subscription, it isn't going to work unless you limit your FiveM server slots to 10. We're not really going to bother actually installing the scripts and then test them in game because that's nothing to do with the AI. It's more the instructions we're going to pay attention to. We're going to see if it picks up if you need custom clothes streaming, and we're going to see just how accurate it is in telling us how to set that one up, and of course how to actually install the mod and maybe where to get them from. So we've got the prompt ready in each one of the AIs. Let's start with Claude and see the answer it gives us. Okay, so this is what it gave us. How to add custom clothing to your FiveM server. It told us to understand custom clothing. It gave us an explanation of add-on and replace. It recommended add-on, which I would also recommend as well. So that's a good start. And straight away, it's in with method 1, which is apparently the easiest way to do it. It's emergency uniform pack. So to download it from here, it gives us a link, which is nice to see. Download the latest version, extract the downloaded files. You'll see folders like EUP, UI, EUP menu, EUP stream, which is true. Copy them all into a subcategory folder called EUP. And then make sure the stream folder is called EUP stream. Okay. And then add to server.c ensure EUP UI and ensure EUP stream. That's pretty odd considering you can see right here, it's put it in a subcategory folder. That is what you'd ensure, not the separate ones, which is weird. I don't really know why it's doing that. And then it's given us how to use them in game. It's really long-winded answer, actually. It's gone ahead and told us how to do custom add-on clothing from custom add-on stuff, which isn't FiveM ready. It's then gone ahead and told us how to create our own clothing with Z-Modeler. Not exactly, but sort of. QuickStart solutions and troubleshooting, which not once here has it mentioned that you need clothes streaming access with either the Argentum subscription or limiting your server slots to 10. So it's sort of failed in that front. Definitely not the best answer. I feel like it would have worked if you actually had clothes streaming enabled. I don't know why it's failed to pick up that you would have ensured this folder name instead. And again, obviously, it's failed to pick up that you need that clothes streaming feature, because if you follow these steps exactly like it's given it to you, it isn't going to work. You're going to straight away realize it's not working. That's because you don't have access to that feature. Let's move on to the next AI. Okay, so the next AI we're going to be doing is Gemini. Let's press enter on this prompt, exact same one we gave Claude, and see what it gives us. Okay, and Gemini has given us answer, and Gemini seems more lost than the rest of them. Gemini, I don't even know what it's doing. It's told us that the direct resource replacement is the simplest, which is true. GTA 5 clothing files, custom modded files in a resources folder. It's not told us where to get them. It's not told us what to use. Using a clothing menu framework like QB Clothing, we've already got QB Core. It's going to give us some guides, and then it's gone ahead and told us how to set up a custom clothing streamed resources thing. It's telling us to make an FX manifest at Lua. It's got really confused here, I guess, with the previous prompt we gave it, but this would be hella confusing for someone else. Why would we be doing this? This is awful. And then it's just a bunch of useless information, to be honest with you. And just like Claude, it's forgotten the fact that you need clothes streaming access for it to even work. Hasn't told us that, and it hasn't told us to limit our server slots to 10. Absolute failure on Gemini's behalf for this one. This is probably one of the worst answers we're going to get. I wouldn't think you'd get anywhere with this, actually, to get any custom clothing in. So let's move on to Grock. Grock, exact same prompt, ready to go. Let's press enter and see what happens. Okay, and this is what Grock gave us after doing the prompt. This is a lot better than the rest of them. To add custom clothing, you'll need to stream add-on clothing, which makes sense, and QB clothing. It's remember that we have QB core, which is a good start, is perfect for it. So, that's perfect. Important requisites, and that is Element Club Argentum subscription required for more than 8 players, which is, it's actually more than 10 players now. They've changed that a little bit, but it did used to be more than 8 players, so I'll give it that because no one else has done that. And add the key, or for testing, set SV max times 8. Perfect. That is exactly what you want. It's done a much better job than the other two so far. So does that will need 7-zip, OpenIV, and some sort of clothing tool. That's not true at all. But it says here to find some custom clothing on GTA5mods.com. I'd do the same thing, or maybe the FiveM forums to be a little bit safer. Look for FiveM ready packs. That is exactly what you want. Avoid GTA Online, SP replaces. You need an add-on format. I would say that's pretty reasonable. Buy/test packs from Tebex, Discord shops, or RP optimized scripts. Yeah, decent. Critical naming. And the rest of this is pretty irrelevant. You don't really need to know anything about this. This is for like creating your own custom clothing. You can see here it's telling us how to make streaming resources for clothing and stuff like that. It's sort of gone off on a tangent like Gemini did, but at least this one has actually told us how to install add-on clothing. Yeah, this is pretty random, and then it's told us how to make custom clothing and given us a YouTube video. So that's okay. It's decent, but right at the top here, if we ignore the rest of it, just the step 1, this is exactly what you want. It's told us that we need the Element Club Argentum subscription. It's told us to edit our slots to 8 if we don't want to pay for it, and it's told us to look for FiveM ready packs. You couldn't ask for more. And finally, moving on to ChatGPT, same prompt in the text box. Let's present it and see what it gives us. Okay, and here we go. This is what ChatGPT has given us for the prompt. This one does sort of suck, actually. It's like Gemini in a way. It's gone off on a tangent about making them. I think they've all got confused off when I asked it to make that vehicle spawning script, which I don't really think is too far-fetched to ask. That we're changing subject, but still on the subject of FiveM servers. It seems to think we want to make a manual clothing script, which this is wrong anyway. It doesn't really make any sense. Create a clothing resource, efforts manifest, add clothing files. Not one mention of the Argentum subscription or limiting your slots to 10. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. Yeah, this is all just a complete waffle. If you want hosted ready clothing packs, whatever, pretty random. I guess it sort of does say you can grab some custom clothing anyway and just like replace them, but doesn't say how to install them, doesn't say where from, absolutely nothing. This is probably equally as bad as Gemini. Okay, and the final ratings are indeed in for the prompt on how to mod our FiveM server, and that is going to be, we've got Claude rated at a 3. Pretty solid answer. It gave us where to go to. It gave us an exact link, which I don't think any of the rest of them did. It told us how to download them. It got some of the in shoreline stuff wrong. Again, unfortunately, it did skip out the Argentum subscription or limiting your server slots to get access to closed streaming. But it is what it is. A lot of them did. So you sort of got to take your losses there. But then it did go off on a tangent like the rest of them did. Then we got Gemini. Gemini absolutely sucked. This you wouldn't have gone anywhere with this if you had no idea what you're doing. This is definitely a 1. Didn't deserve anything more or less than that. It was pretty ass. Then we got Grock. Grock definitely smashed this one out of the park. This is a 4 out of 5 in my opinion. It literally told us exactly how to do it. The only thing it was lacking was it didn't give us an exact mod to get, which is okay, but it did give us an exact link to go to get FiveM ready clothing. Told us FiveM ready, told us how to do it. It told us that we need the subscription. We need to limit our slots. Otherwise, pretty much perfect. And then again, it went off on a tangent, but they all did that. So once more, we'll just have to ignore that one. And then finally, we've got ChatGPT. This one sucked as well. This one doesn't deserve anything more than a 1. It's got a 1 just to match Gemini. This was pretty much equally as bad as Gemini. It doesn't say anything of anything useful. You would be screwed if you needed this to add mods to your FiveM server, to be honest with you. Okay, and the final verdict is in for what AI you should use to set up your next FiveM server and just to help you out in general with FiveM development. We've got Gemini coming in out of 20 points with a 7. I think you guys already guessed it. Gemini's literally scored the lowest. And next, we have got ChatGPT at a 10.5 out of 20, which is respectable. You know, it's a little bit over half. It's decent. Then we have Grock, which is an 11.5 out of 20, which is, yeah, it's again respectable. It's good. It's solid. You know, it's what you want. There's some negatives. There's some positives. And then we're finishing off with Claude, which somehow I don't even know how we've ended up in this position. Scored an 11.5 out of 20 as well. So there you guys have it. I think maybe when you do your next FiveM server, I would do a hybrid between Grock and Claude. Do both prompts, see what they give you, and then go ahead and use the one that you prefer. Maybe that's the best way to do it, rather than narrowing down your selection just to one, because each AI seemed to do different things in better ways. It was pretty odd, but yeah. So either Claude or Grock, or combine the both, and you pretty much have the perfect AI suite for your next FiveM server.